And welcome back to the Cover 3 podcast here on CBS Sports. That's Bud Elliott. That's Tom Fornelli. I'm Chip Patterson. We've got the college football playoff matchups set in the Cotton Bowl in the home of the Dallas Cowboys. We will have Alabama, the number 1 seed, taking on Cincinnati, the number 4 seed. Crimson Tide early 13.5, 14-point favorites, 57.5 or so is your over-under. I believe that game will kick off first if they move as tradition. The evening slate will be the Orange Bowl, and that will have Georgia, which is the number Michigan, which is the number 2 seed, going up against Georgia, which is the number 3 seed. Georgia about a 7-point favorite or so, and a unders in the 40s for your shorties, right there around 43.5 or so. So the Final Four is set. We've got a lot more to get to, and later in the day, we'll find out more about the New Year's Six. We'll find out more about the bowl games. Remember, Mondays, upon further review, a big portion of it is going to be pointing your attention to the very best bowl matchups in this bowl season. So with Alabama and Cincinnati in the Cotton, with Michigan and Georgia in the Orange, what do we think about the top 4 from the selection committee?
So much drama. Like, wow, I had no idea what the top 4 was going to be after yesterday. It's crazy to see what they came up. No, they're interesting games, and I think it's the right 4, and I don't really think there's much debate about that. I think you could nitpick who's 2 and who's 3 if you really want to. Hell, you can nitpick who's 4 because there's one undefeated team in the playoff, and they're the lowest ranked of the 4. So it's like, you can nitpick it, but I'm good with it. I think these are going to be interesting games. And Bud, like we talked about last night, like Cincinnati's corners might not be the worst matchup against Alabama's receivers. Not that there's a good matchup against Alabama's receivers.
If you guys waited around for the playoff committee to announce this, and you didn't just watch us live last night or watch us on YouTube at any point this morning or listen to us, it was pretty obvious. I think this is cool that a G5 team finally got in. I think it's a bit disingenuous how they addressed it on the show, talking about, oh, what about the glass ceiling? I'm like, well, you kind of needed to have an absolute inside straight draw hit here with figuring out who the number 5 team would likely be, and then schedule them years in advance and then beat them, which is pretty solid. And then also have a 2-loss Pac-12 champion, not a contending ACC champion, a 2-loss Big 12 champion, and also a 2-loss runner-up Big 10 team. I think it's cool they got in. I'm excited to watch these games. The one thing I don't want to be like I'm riding for the G5 here, but I don't want, if Bama does smoke Cincinnati, and we'll have plenty of time to preview this stuff, and I think it is possible they do, because you just don't see that level of size and athleticism combined in that league consistently enough. And Bama looks like it's coming together pretty well. I don't want to hear like Cincinnati didn't belong. The semifinals are almost always blowouts. We have our columns written and then wait around for another hour because they put a million commercials in this stuff to fire them off and just insert the final score. These are usually over by the half. So, guys, I don't think Cincinnati belongs any less than the other team does. It's not like they're 20th in my power ratings and got up there. They're a worthy team.
Hell, I would say Cincinnati deserves it more than anybody because they haven't lost. Like everybody else has lost.
The other piece that is going to be a little misleading in terms of like hope trafficking, you're supposed to look at Cincinnati only within the context of what they've done this season, but it is impossible not to look at this Cincinnati team and not think that they're 22-1, not think that the 9-win season a year ago, 3-point loss to Georgia, then going 13-0 this season, win against Notre Dame. The quarterback has still been the same. Sauce Gardner's still been there. Kobe Bryant's still been there. Bud, as Bud Elliott has mentioned, and as listeners have reminded us, last year's Cincinnati team was better. The Bud Elliott Bearcats.
Not everybody agrees.
The Bud Elliott
I agree.
Bearcats take so that last year's team was better, but I think that my point is the personnel is experienced, AKA it's been a part of this success. And that's why I think if you are a group of 5 team that is hoping to be able to match what Cincinnati has accomplished, and if you're a coach who thinks that you can do that, that's a more realistic scenario. It's not we just need to go 13-0 and have a Power 5 win. It probably also means the year before you were knocking on the door, you were in the New Year's Six, you were playing against the best teams and one of the best teams in the country on the biggest stage. So Cincinnati's the most deserving. I like the way that you said that, Tom. And they have looked like one of the best teams at times, kind of as we said last night. You know what my actual sort of wrinkle my brow moment was with the release of the top 6? It was Ohio State at number 6, because I wonder if the Buckeyes had beaten Oregon but lost to Michigan. Is this a 2 SEC, 2 Big Ten college football playoff?
Yes.
That's what I think too.
Yeah, I mean, I think clearly the committee really likes Ohio State, and when you I know that there's some people probably going to be like, well, Ohio State should be ranked ahead of Baylor, and again, there's arguments for both. It's just I think that if you look at Ohio State's losses, they were Oregon and Michigan. Michigan's the number 2 team. We don't know where Oregon's going to be yet, but it played for a Pac-12 title, where as good as Baylor was, and as good as Baylor was at the end of the year, and some of those wins it had, it also did lose to TCU. And I think that's probably kind of a tiebreaker when they were looking at those two.
That would have been very disappointing for Cincinnati. Though, shout out to Cincinnati. You're the best team in Ohio.
Listen, I'm happy Cincinnati got in, and like I said, I think it's the most deserving. But I think if Oklahoma State wins yesterday in like a convincing fashion, I think there's a very good chance that Oklahoma State's in over Cincinnati right now.
So that's congratulations. This is the set of circumstances that is required for Tom Fornelli to lose his 100-1 bet, which I don't know if you're watching on HQ. Just got listen, Danny. Danny's just airing all of our dirty laundry on the large. Like, we have an amazing reach with the Cover 3 podcast, but I mean, CBS Sports HQ, just like global, all over the place. Everyone's watching it, especially on a Sunday. And Danny's like, you guys should see what we're texting about.
Danny still hasn't paid me for the bet that I won. It's funny when I win a bet, I says just buy me beers. When Danny wins the bet, he wants it in cash.
I don't think Oklahoma State would have been in over Cincinnati.
Okay.
I do disagree on that. Oklahoma State is not a name brand. They're not going to be better for ratings. I also think that finally putting Cincinnati in helps to relieve some of the antitrust claims, right? That like, hey, this is rigged. Like they're easily willing to sacrifice Oklahoma State getting in for Cincinnati, in my opinion, right? In fact, I think Cincinnati will do better ratings than Oklahoma State because of the intrigue of it being a G5 program, as opposed to, God, this year really didn't have that many great teams. All right, I guess Oklahoma State in there. So I think they would have left Cincinnati in because the margins are close enough.
You know what else this could do? This could help lead to expansion quicker, in the sense that now these conferences are all going to look and say, oh, crap, they're letting group of 5 teams in. So we might not, we might lose more spots, because this does set a precedent. Like, if an American team goes 13-0 next season and has the same exact year as Cincinnati just had, can they leave them out after doing this? So it could be like a more of a catalyst to be like, all right, we need to expand to make sure we get our teams in there. Or just like the Big 12 have any legal right, but you're the lawyer. Does the Big 12 have any legal rights to Cincinnati's playoff money for this?
That's a good question. I don't know.
No,
I know.
No.
That'd be hilarious.
I think what the argument is on the fly.
Yeah.
File a lawsuit and hope they settle.
Yeah. No, this I was gonna say, like, you've already, because of exit fees, and I'm sure that everybody wants to hear about exit fees right now, but because of the exit fees and exit fee negotiations, which include trying to figure out what are we going to do with old media rights payments and future media rights payments, like, I think that's part of the Maryland deal, where it took a couple years of being in the Big Ten before Maryland was even getting the full Big Ten check, because to be able to leave the ACC and land in the Big Ten when the Big Ten wanted, they went to court. There was like one case or suit filed in Maryland, one filed in Greensboro, and the end result was Maryland had to break off some of its check and still be able to send it back to the ACC every year.
Yeah, this is one of those things where I knew at the time, and then I quickly released the memory because it was no longer pertinent to me. But I'm not entirely convinced Maryland's getting a full share yet.
Still?
It still might only be getting a partial share.
Yeah. So I think that when we talk about like whatever's earned for the American Athletic Conference or via Cincinnati, I'm sure that could be used as a nice little sum of money to help Cincinnati get what it wants. Right. I mean, hey, that's what's it. You get that tax refund check. Now, all of a sudden we can start talking about some of those home improvement projects. Like this is a nice little tax refund check for Cincinnati for making the college football playoff. Have you all gone through to like just off the top of your head think that who you're going to pick straight up, or even like betting angles against the spread? Like you said, got plenty of time to do this. Just sort of like your snap judgment on what you think is going to happen.
I think that, yeah, go.
Sorry, go ahead, Tom.
No, you go.
I think both numbers are fairly good, to be honest. I think Cincinnati can do some things that make Bama a little bit uncomfortable. I don't know if Cincinnati can hold up along the lines of scrimmage, especially with how Bama looked to be improved up front, against Georgia. The other one is more interesting to me. I think the numbers say if this keeps going up to fire on Michigan, both defenses are really pretty good. However, Michigan really is a team that wants to pound the football, and that is not effective against Georgia by anybody. So this is likely going to be mostly on the arm of the Michigan quarterbacks. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah, I think Alabama's probably going to beat Cincinnati. I feel like that's whether it's a blowout or not, I don't know. I think it could be a blowout. I think it could be surprisingly close depending on how the Bearcats defense holds up. But I think we're looking at a situation where the most likely outcome is going to be the Alabama-Georgia rematch.
I know.
And if that happens, I'm probably leaning Alabama this time because
it's more likely than any other outcome, right, Tom?
Yeah.
Like you would take that over the field of any other possible outcomes.
Yeah, yes. I think the biggest, like the one game where I feel like there's less clarity, and even then I don't feel like it's super cloudy. I think Michigan can muck it up with Georgia. I don't know because I do think that while Michigan is a team that likes to run the ball, they have shown the ability to move the ball vertically in the passing game, which maybe they'll be able to do to better effect against, Georgia. But I don't know if defensively, like they're really good. It's just, if Aiden Hutchinson and David Ajabo if you could slow them down a bit, and I think Georgia's got a good offensive line that is capable of doing it, then I don't know how they hold up the rest of that game against that team. But we've also seen if Georgia just wants to run the ball down their throat too, which is their preferred style of play, this is a game that's going to be hard for either team to pull away from. So if anything stupid happens or there's just an unlucky bounce, I do feel like that one could go a number of different ways. But I do think we're due for a rematch.
Rematch is what I would pick, is what I just did pick. They're like, hey, what do you think? Who's going to win it? I was like, Georgia and Alabama. But I think that right now, in this very moment, and I have plenty of time to change my mind, I think I want Michigan to win. I think.
I want, just for the wouldn't it be hilarious principle, I would love a Michigan-Cincinnati title game.
That would be hilarious. Wouldn't it be hilarious? Listen, the Cincinnati...
bunch of Buckeye fans suddenly buying Cincinnati hats and jerseys and stuff.
But I really fear for the Alabama-Cincinnati matchup just because I just think that the game planning in that Alabama staff room, when you're looking at the tape of Cincinnati, I don't think that Alec Pierce, for as great as he looks mowing a lawn with no shirt on, and the rest of those, Leonard Taylor at the tight end position. Let's see who else. For everybody I think Tyler Scott is another pretty good wide receiver. I could be messing up that name. I just don't think that the skill position talent's really going to intimidate Alabama defensively, where they're looking at it and they're really going to feel stressed. I think that they can sell out on trying to make sure that Jerome Ford, who, by the way, used to play at Alabama, doesn't end up, grinding them out. And I think that Cincinnati's offensive line against an Alabama defensive front that we have not considered plus value compared to its peers in the SEC, or at least not a top tier in the SEC, I think that same group could end up really causing some problems against Cincinnati's offensive front. I do think that without John Mechie, the Cincinnati defensive backs and the Cincinnati secondary give Cincinnati the best chance possible. But I'm a little bit fearful for the snoozer. Alabama puts them at arm's length and just cruises it and squeezes the life out of them. You look out there and it's like the Washington game all over again, where Jake Browning's just never going to get a first down. It's just they're faster than them. They're able to get good closing speed. That's the result that I probably have the most confidence in. Is I kind of think Alabama's going to roll in that game.
It could. I mean, because that was the one thing that it wasn't talked about much, and we didn't really talk about it last night on the reaction pod, is that in that game, as great as Alabama looked, there was so much talk about Will Anderson as a Heisman, candidate, Heisman finalist. But Will Anderson did not really have much of an impact in that game. And I think that Georgia's offensive line deserves a lot of credit for that. I don't know if Cincinnati's offensive line is capable of that same kind of performance. And that's why I think that, Alabama's defense could eat.
Let me add a question here, because it sort of started creeping into my mind, and especially with the absence of John Mechie. I wonder if, and Bud, please tell me who we should be having an eye on, because it was Ja'Cory Brooks who caught the winner.
Yeah,
I guess against Auburn. We remember from all the way back in the spring game, Jai Hall had an absolutely bananas.
Ja'Cory caught the ball to send him to overtime.
To send him to game tying.
Mechie, I believe, caught the ball to win it in overtime.
But I wonder if, and this is something that we've seen at Alabama, it's something that I've seen at Clemson. There's just two teams that I've experienced covering here in the college football playoff era. The freshmen can make a leap in this time between the end of the season and the college football playoff or in the bowl games. If John Mechie's out, how do you feel about those freshman wide receivers? Who are some of the other young players for an Alabama or even maybe for a Georgia that you think could end up really starting to flash in this moment? I think I remember Justin Ross, light bulb went off for him his freshman year. And it was in the end of the season, you saw him really be dominant in the 2018 college football playoff as they went on to win the national championship. I mentioned those wide receivers because of John Mechie, but I understand the concept can spread to all positions. Who are some of those rookies that you think might be able to have an opportunity to really show out and follow that same path?
Sure. So with John Mechie, assumedly out, I think it was not McMurphy, but maybe Schleybaugh said that Bama fears the torn ACL. Bama signed just an absolutely tremendous class of receivers this past year. Jai Hall might have been the most talented, but obviously a lot of just inability to get out of his own way stuff that happened in high school, and Bama went ahead and took a chance on him anyway. That seems to have continued there at Alabama. But Brooks is a really, really good player. I've seen Ja'Cory since he was, I think, in 7th grade. I remember the South Florida Express 7-on coaches telling me, hey, go watch our youth game. I'm like, I'm not going to watch a youth game, right? And I finally did, because it was him against Fred Davis, the 5-star corner who signed with Clemson, and then Miles Brooks, who signed with, I think, the Hokies. Pretty cool matchup for 7th graders. And he ended up playing varsity. Anyway, he just kept getting better. He was that biggest, fastest kid as a 7th grader who didn't peak too early. Ja'Cory could get ready. I think JoJo Earl is another name to watch there. Really dynamic guy in the slot. The third one I would throw out, obviously, is Holden. It's Bama. I'm extremely confident that they will get one of these guys ready with a month to prep. Very confident, to answer your question, Chip. I think they will definitely have somebody ready.
I think the biggest upset is that there's a guy named JoJo Earl, and he's not a NASCAR driver.
That's a good point. He's also from Texas. So with this semifinal being played in Texas, be kind of cool for him to show out on his home turf.
Oh, absolutely. Okay. Anything, there's a couple other headlines throughout college football that while we're here gathered, I figured we'd go ahead and start to break down. But is there anything else from the playoff top 6 that stands out to you?
Illinois was hosed. No team finished hotter than the Illini. They deserved a shot.
I mean, if we're going to talk about recent form, who's better?
Yeah. How many wins at Penn State did Cincinnati have? None. I mean, wow, Cincinnati had 1 road win over a ranked team. Illinois had 2, but I see how it is. Illinois is not the brand name like the Bearcats are.
All right, so we've got it does seem like things are settling on the coaching carousel. multiple reports indicating that Oklahoma is nearing a deal with Clemson defensive coordinator Brent Venables. There are some other pieces to this that are being widely reported, including the potential of Brent Venables trying to lure away Ole Miss offensive coordinator Jeff Lebby to come run the offense in Norman. We also have some reports that Mario Cristobal could be on his way out of Oregon. We can start either one of these. You want to start with Brent or Mario?
I feel like Oklahoma seems, based on who's tweeting in the reports, further along. So we should probably start there.
Okay. So it is Oklahoma representatives on their way to Clemson right now, flight track their asses as they land in Greenville, and then get in the car to be able to head to wherever the Venables family is. Brent Venables was one of the first names out the gate. I will admit I was probably too dismissive of the chances that he was going to end up being the selection. I saw Alan Kinney, blatant homerism, on Twitter. If you want to follow him, he's been a long time Oklahoma writer and somebody whose opinion I always think is very interesting. And he said, no inside information here, but what his sense was is that the Brent Venables hire is probably paired with keeping some of the current skeleton staff in place. I mean, it wasn't like a coach got fired and you need to clean house. A coach left, took a couple assistants with him. But if you still have good assistants that are doing good work and want to stay committed to the program, then the Brent Venables hire, somebody who loves the university, has some history there, you might be able to pair him up with some of that same staff and be able to keep continuity going. The hire of Brent Venables, he suggested, and I think it's a pretty interesting observation to explore, is a move to keep continuity instead of trying to totally blow it up, start over, bring in a new head coach, allow him to hire all of his same assistants. If you think that you like the infrastructure around that program, and if you want to keep it in place, then maybe this Brent Venables hire is a piece that can get you there.
It's not a sexy hire.
No.
I feel like this is if you look at Oklahoma's history of hiring coaches, tends to be what they do. They get coordinators, big name coordinators, or Lincoln Riley wasn't a big name, but he became Oklahoma's offensive coordinator before he became the job. So I guess it still counts. But like, it's kind of like the Bob Stoops plan. Bob Stoops was the defensive coordinator at Florida. There was a team that was competing, from the SEC, competing for national titles, was a terrific defense. They bring him to Oklahoma. Brent Venables, defensive coordinator at Clemson, team that's competing and winning national titles, routinely has some of the best defenses in the country. And obviously he has the Oklahoma ties. So it feels like it's from that same playbook. And hey, if it works out as successfully as the Bob Stoops hire did, I think Oklahoma will be happy. So I think there's a lot of reasons it makes sense. But while Oklahoma fans are probably not going to want to hear this part, the more fascinating part of this move to me is what happens with Clemson. Because when you think about Dabo's time at Clemson and what he's built that program into, like the narrative around it was always Dabo's the great CEO and he's had excellent coordinators who he's allowed to do the job. And Clemson has paid those coordinators well to make sure that they stuck around. But the last few years, Jeff Scott left for the South Florida job. Now, if Brent Venables is leaving for the Oklahoma job, and who knows how much longer Tony Elliott's going to stick around, especially if that Virginia job's open, maybe that's something that's attractive to them. I'm more interested in seeing what happens with Clemson from this point forward, because I still think Oklahoma is probably going to be good, but it's going to be an interesting situation when they move to the SEC. But with the ACC, where there's so much more wiggle room right now, and Clemson's coming off down season compared to their recent standards, that's far more interesting to me.
I'm very interested in this from a couple angles. Number one, if the reports are true that he'll get Jeff Lebby from Ole Miss, this very much kind of copies what Oklahoma did back in 2000. If you read Bob Stoops' book, he talks about, I wanted to hire a defensive coordinator who drove me nuts, or an offensive coordinator rather, who drove me nuts when I was the DC at Florida. And that guy was named Mike Leach. He was the OC at Kentucky, and he took him with him to Oklahoma. They won a title 2 years later. Obviously, Lebby and what Ole Miss does is very frustrating to a lot of defensive coordinators, and I'm sure that Venables probably hates defending it. He also got a piece of playing it 3 years ago when Kendall Briles was the OC for the 1 year there in Tallahassee. Now, they still whipped him, but I'm sure he didn't like prepping because of how how unique that system is. It's a little less unique in the Big 12, but there's not that there's a lot of teams that run air raid, but not quite so much the Baylor stuff. Who else will get to fill out his staff? I don't know. The guy's a pretty proven coach. He is a good recruiter. I think he'll probably do well there. But again, coaching hires are a crapshoot no matter how good you think they are typically. And as Tom mentioned, if everybody's operating at peak efficiency, and there's no guarantee that they will be, what's Oklahoma's roster ceiling in the new SEC? 5th? If they really kill it on the recruiting trail, that is not the position they're normally in. And there will be a time period where fans and boosters and everybody else needs to adjust expectations. I would think, just based on your access to talent in that league. On the Clemson side, I'm also very interested in this because there are a lot of reports out there that Dan Radakovich is likely to accept the Miami job. Did you guys know he's an alum? I didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
A business school alum.
Okay.
Business school. So I think he graduated from it doesn't matter. Anyways, go ahead.
I mean, he'll have the chance to make the football hire, the baseball hire, and the likely the basketball hire there because Larinaga is still awesome, but pretty up there in age.
No longer a spring chicken. Yeah.
Tony Elliott is very in the mix for the Virginia job, as our Chris Hummer of 24/7 Sports reported this morning. When's the last time Dabo had to go outside and make a major hire? One of their hallmarks of that program has been stability. Now you're going to have a new AD who didn't hire Dabo, but will very, very much be, incentivized, and it could be an in-house hire as well to keep him as they will. But I'm interested in what Dabo does at the coordinator spots if he happens to lose both of his guys.
I think it is the most fascinating time for Clemson football, undoubtedly. The transfer portal. Are you going to use it or not? What do you think about it, Dabo? When are you going to come up to speed with the transfer portal? Forget your relationship with the transfer portal. What is Dabo Swinney's relationships with other coaches right now? Who is on Dabo's short list to call? It's been all about the Clemson family. It's all been about those Wednesday nights at the facility when it's all the coaches and all of their families and all their kids eating with the players, everyone in together. It's been about Jeff Scott, Tony Elliott, Brent Venables, kids playing on the team. Like you said, the Virginia and Duke are, jobs where Tony Elliott could land. If you all of a sudden are having to replace both of your coordinators and there's no athletic director in town, I can't tell if Dabo's about to become the most powerful person or whether this is all going to be like the beginning of some turning point, right? Some turning point in the Dabo Swinney Clemson tenure, because part of me wants to say that Dabo has the potential to just become just the super alpha. This is just he now that man of shorter stature just grows almost in a comic book style manner or a video game style manner, because I think his relationship with Jim Clements, the university president, is pretty good. And that relationship, I believe, has allowed for a lot of the alignment that we talk about. Dan Radakovich has also been, pretty successful, but he's also somebody who's very, in the industry in terms, he was at Georgia Tech before he was at Clemson. He was at LSU before he was at Georgia Tech. This is someone who is probably going to look for an opportunity where he can go and challenge himself professionally, not necessarily a lifer at any one school where they land. Not surprised that he's going to be on the move. But for the Tigers football program, how long can the old blueprint work? Because now you're going to have to take some pieces out of the machine and replace them with new ones. And I got to imagine there's going to be some friction. And either they're going to be better for it, having to modernize and get over this hump, or it's going to end up, making it very difficult to recapture the success of the last couple of years.
Chip, I'm incredibly impressed, by the way, with other Carolina news and your professionalism during this podcast. The Panthers have also fired Joe Brady.
Wow.
On a Sunday. That's
they're off.
Oh, that's right. We talked about this.
Yeah, I told you on the side. I was like, hey, Monday press conference isn't going well. Everyone seems really pissed off right now in the building. So we'll see what happens.
Was Joe Brady the one who traded for Sam Darnold and then signed a washed up Cam Newton?
I think that would be the owner, David Tepper.
Oh, did he injure Christian McCaffrey?
So to answer your Clemson question, Chip, they have recruited very well, but they have very much focused on fit. They don't really oversign very much. You guys already mentioned they don't really hit the transfer portal. I do expect that to change some. I don't think they're going to be like transfer portal mavens, but you can't tell me that you can't find like a center with decent grades who wants to play as part of the Clemson family. I know they have higher academic standards than we might realize, but I do think their hit rate in recruiting, and I kind of stopped saying this because I said it for like 5 or 6 years in a row. It made me look like an idiot each time. I just should have kept doubling down. I think their hit rate in recruiting was a little bit unsustainable. Like they recruited extremely well, but not on that Bama Georgia level as far as, in our opinion, of their players. But yet they were getting Bama Georgia level results consistently. And that's just extremely hard to sustain like that level of outlier performance over that period of time. A lot of it was probably quarterback driven and incredible staff chemistry. So very interested to see what they do now.
And I also think too, it's like you have to use the transfer portal these days. It's not like it was like even a decade ago, and it's like transfers was like a dirty word. It's like, oh, you don't want to fill your program with transfers. It's no way to win. It's like I feel like in this day and age with the portal, you're doing yourself a disservice if you aren't using it to your advantage.
Where would Joe Brady land that would make sense in college football if he wanted to return to college football?
Maybe he's going to end up being Brent Venables' his offensive coordinator in Oklahoma.
Or Ole Miss's if Jeff Lebby leaves, or Dabo Sweeney's.
Has Brian Kelly hired an offensive coordinator yet? I know
No,
Joe Brady's name is still kind of big at LSU.
And Tommy
Reese is staying in Notre Dame.
Tommy's staying.
Although I don't know if Brian Kelly would want Joe Brady, because the second they lose a game they're not supposed to lose, people will say that Joe Brady should be the head coach and fire Brian Kelly.
This is true.
What if Joe Brady wants Oregon or UCLA
or Virginia
or Virginia?
I don't know. That's the thing. I don't know if. Do you think his name is big enough to where he's going to be able to step into a Power 5 head coaching job right away, or you think that he's going to have to do a coordinator role or a G5 role?
I actually don't know.
It's a weird situation. I don't know how he's going to be viewed at this point.
I mean, they were so good, but they also had so much talent on that team. I mean, who's the last coordinator to basically get his first coordinator gig, have it be like just one of the most unreal talented units of all time?
He also wasn't the coordinator.
Coaching job.
Yeah, he wasn't. It was
technically not.
Yeah. Technically not.
Look what they ran when he left.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy who was the quote unquote coordinator was still there.
I was also told that it was the way, like even specifically within the offensive staff, he was third down in red zone. It's like Ensminger gets final call on first downs, second downs, anything between the 20s. And then when you get inside the red zone, what are you looking at, bud?
The amazing pick that Jamar Chase just gave to Cincinnati. Burrow hits him in stride, or just gave to the Chargers. Burrow hits him in stride for a wide open touchdown, and he goes like this over the shoulder and bobbles it backwards to the DB. Sorry.
He's on the fantasy team. That screwed me.
He felt the Joe Brady reverberations. He was like, no.
Although I'm also on Chargers +3, so it helps me.
We don't need to spend too much time here on the Cover 3 podcast breaking down Tom's card.
NFL Sundays are a swing, baby.
Should we pivot to Miami?
Yes, because it's super, super awkward right now.
Mm-hmm.
Here's how awkward it is. While there are tons of reports out about Manny Diaz being replaced by Mario Cristobal, Manny Diaz is currently out recruiting today for Miami. Meanwhile, Mario Cristobal is currently in the home of a recruit in Southern California, according to Matt Prim of 24/7 Sports. And he has multiple in-home visits with commits and targets in the Southern California area all lined up today. So Mario Cristobal is currently recruiting today for Oregon. Manny Diaz is currently recruiting for Miami. As all of this news is springing everywhere, it is being reported that no decision has been made. Oregon has a contract extension. Miami's coming after it. Miami doesn't want a Chip's reading of the situation. Very, very clear. Chip's reading the situation. Miami doesn't want to fire Manny until Mario says yes, because then they'd be afraid of what to do if Mario says no.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a horrible position for Manny Diaz first, but also for the Miami Hurricanes.
It's awkward as hell. Because, like, if Mario says no and stays at Oregon and gets that giant new contract, and, like, what do you do if you're Manny Diaz? Like, that they're actively and not very secretively trying to find your replacement. So it's like, oh, great, cool. And I've got a new AD coming in. So it's like, if you're Manny Diaz, hell, I joked around about this on Twitter, and most Miami fans said they'd be okay with it. But, like, if you're Manny Diaz, are you gauging interest in any other Power 5 jobs right now?
Yes.
I don't know if he's going to get another Power 5 job right now, but I think what you do if you're Manny Diaz is you keep recruiting. Like, you guys know coaches, their confidence is unbelievably high and many times unjustified.
Right.
They believe that they are always one player, one season from turning things around. And if Miami botches the Mario thing, and I don't think they will, I think it's going to be done, but who knows? You better be recruiting out there. And then how do you turn around the narrative? I think that one is actually easy to say, maybe not easy to do. You just say, look, guys, I told you it was all media noise. I was right. I've stayed on message the entire time. I said I was going to be the head coach at Miami, and all that other stuff was nonsense, and that they fired the AD because I won that power struggle. And I did, and I'm still here. So on the off chance Miami botches this, I think that's the message. I mean, what would be the point of not going to recruit today? I guess pride. It is a little bit embarrassing that, like, Miami is actively out there negotiating with a new coach until they can fire you. But it also is a really bad look to your next employer that, hey, it looked like I was going to be out, so I just quit on it. No, I'm going to keep fighting and battling for what I'm trying to build here until you tell me I'm done, because this is my quote-unquote dream job, et cetera, et cetera.
Let me ask you guys this question, but I'm pretty sure I know your answer. But, Chip, if Mario Cristobal is not a Miami alum, does leaving Oregon for Miami make any sense in the world to you?
No. And be deeper than Miami alum is grew up there, wasn't
his mom
assistant there. His mom's not doing well. Family connections. Was it brother's a cop down there?
Brother's a cop down there. Mom is in poor health. It's been reported by multiple outlets. He's from down there. I think if not for all those factors, obviously, like, two of his good friends are reported billionaires or soon to be billionaires. They went to Columbus High School together. Those are kind of the guys leading the charge. Lamonis just pledged $3 million on Twitter yesterday. There's a report that Ruiz wants to build in a 50,000 seat on-campus stadium. Shout out to David Lake for that reporting there of Inside the U. He's the guy whose company is valued at $20 billion by Forbes. So I think if you were not a Miami alum, but you had those friends and your mom was in poor health, sure, that makes sense. Like, I don't know that you had to have played for Miami, but it certainly impacts how he views the job, I would say. Also, Lincoln Riley is at USC. We've said this before. He's had it on easy mode as far as recruiting. You had a cluster with USC unjustified sanctions, and then Len Swan, and then Pat Hayton as ADs, and they paid Pat Hayton like Nick Saban style money, or Clay Helton Nick Saban style money, and couldn't get rid of him for a long time. It allowed you to go in and raid California pretty effectively.
And also,
that party's over.
So we were talking about earlier in the show, Clemson might be. It looks more vulnerable right now than it has in a long time. So maybe. I just think that in a vacuum, personally, I would much rather be at Oregon than Miami, just because I know I have the full power of Nike behind me. So anything I ask for, I'm going to get.
I can still be selfishly excited about it, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Because of, like, whether they win or not, good for business.
Mm-hmm.
Miami gets hyped about an Al Golden team that's overrated. A Manny Diaz team that's a little bit, overrated. Can you imagine what the fan interest and the college football interest is going to be if it seems like there's a lot of real, as Bud mentioned, real financial support coming from the Miami community, and you're bringing in a relentless and dogged recruiter like Mario Cristobal? You've mentioned, Bud, that running the Saban playbook in the SEC seems a little bit crowded. You ain't dealing with a bunch of Saban playbooks when you're recruiting in the ACC. And I think that's all of that is good for business and something that should be exciting.
Completely agree. It's really good for the ACC overall as well, because when they go and try to get ESPN to renegotiate or whatever they need to do to try to get more money out of that deal, which is really just going to kill them long term if they don't get that thing fixed. It's good to have multiple programs that are actually like legitimate national brands. You know, Miami, when it's good, is a national brand. Clemson, due to recent success, when it's good, is kind of a national brand. I say kind of because they still don't draw that well on TV compared to what you think they would. It's more regional. You know, Florida State's obviously a national brand if they're good. North Carolina, kind of in that Clemson bucket, but I think, you know, obviously the name appeal, especially because basketball has helped so much. Like they need Miami's what? They've been in the league now for 18 years and they've been to the conference title game one time.
Correct.
And lost it.
Correct.
This is kind of what they need, an infusion of cash and an infusion of excitement down there.
I want to.
You mentioned. Oh, I'm sorry. You mentioned the 50,000 seat stadium. Where on Miami's campus are they going to fit a 50,000 seat stadium?
I guess there's a high school down there they want to
tear down.
Yeah,
there's America in a
high school field, not a.
I was going to say that's America in a nutshell. Tear down a school, build a stadium.
I mean,
who do you guys go get at Oregon? Sorry, Chip. I didn't mean to transition that fast. I was just thinking off the top of my head here because I saw all the Lane stuff in the chat.
Joe Brady. No,
John Canzano said that he believes that
Chip Kelly is good.
Chip Kelly will be a target and could be the target.
And then UCLA comes open, and then as we were goofing around with last night, Dave Aranda goes to UCLA.
Yeah,
so
that I do think would happen.
Yeah, because I really don't think
UCLA.
Dave Aranda's. Yeah, I don't think Dave Aranda's leaving Baylor for a job on the East Coast. I think it's got to be a Pac-12 gig in California, closer to home for him to do it.
Do you think that the announcement of the extension for Lane Kiffin changes your perception of Lane Kiffin as a candidate for other jobs?
I saw this morning, and I think it was in my tweet deck, news list. So I generally trust stuff that's on there that the buyout didn't change. So it might just be establishing the price of poker to get in the conversation with Lane. Here's the question though. Lane was born in Minnesota. He didn't grow up his entire life in Florida, but he does have some Florida ties. Obviously his dad was a DC for the Bucks down here for a long time. I think it was pretty well known that he would want to get the Florida or Miami jobs just based on how many people in the media were mentioning that. I mean, that doesn't happen by accident. If you're Oregon and this Cristobal thing goes down, that would now be two coaches in a row that you have lost to jobs that you feel are, of similar caliber, but the coaching community is probably very mixed on that and probably doesn't agree with you if you're Oregon, but certainly there's the appeal of going back to Florida. Do you risk hiring another guy who might want to bolt for a job back in Florida or along the East Coast? Or do you want to go with somebody with more West Coast ties? Or do you care?
See, that's kind of what scares me about Lane is that what's the longest Lane has stayed at any one job?
Mm-hmm.
Which is why I would, if I'm an AD, that kind of, it's I think he's a good coach, but I don't really expect him to be here very long because I feel like he's somebody that's going to keep moving around until he lands that, top elite job if he ever gets one. So, yeah, I don't know. I think that
3.5 seasons. That's your answer.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that's a good thing. I think that'll probably play a part in their decision making, but I don't know. I don't know if I would base my decision on that.
Other names, just quickly: Harsin, Wilcox.
Wilcox, I think, will definitely come up. I think Harsin. It's funny because every job that comes open, there's been reports thinking that Harsin might be interested in the Colorado State job, which. Okay, maybe he's not happy at Auburn, but that just seems strange. What happens if their head coach leaves for Colorado State?
I think they would probably be pretty happy if he leaves.
But who's on the Auburn list?
Well, Auburn's got to get a new AD first.
Yeah,
they have an AD right now, but I'd be surprised if that went down. I'd be surprised if their current AD makes the hire.
Because, Miami's out here trying to roll out an athletic. I think Miami would like to make an athletic director and head coach hire in the same day.
Mm-hmm.
Introduce them both. Look,
who introduces who at who introduces them at the press conference? Then the president.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
And they come out and they say, "Do you know how serious we are about football? We've got Clemson's athletic director, and we got Oregon's head coach. And like those just two things written out say, okay, sounds like you're pretty serious about college football.
I think the billionaires introduced both.
I think Michael Irvin introduces both, and then
On the
just
next
talks for
episode of The
half an hour.
Prophet. What about Sataki?
For
Oregon. I mean, they lost Wilson. They lost a bunch of really good players. They lost their OC to Baylor. And they didn't, I can't say they didn't miss a beat because they weren't quite as good this year as they were last year. But their drop-off is not at all what I thought it was going to be. Like, they did a hell of a job this year, in my opinion.
I agree.
Is Sataki, I'm not familiar enough with his recruiting because obviously recruiting is a little different at BYU. Do you think that he would bring the kind of recruiting that Oregon's going to need?
I think he could.
Because that's the weird thing about like the Chip Kelly connection. Because why did Chip Kelly leave the college? Because the recruiting stuff. He wasn't really into it. He came back because he had to. And it's like, I feel like replacing Cristobal with Chip Kelly is like going in a completely opposite direction. So like Chip Kelly would have to bring in an excellent recruiting staff and then just be like, just let me run the damn offense.
Sataki might also be kind of digging in his heels. It's been there since 16.
I mean, BYU is not a bad place to be.
And like, if you've gotten it, like if you've gone through, what was it? He had a couple flirts with hot seat, like 17, 18. People are like, I don't know. Is he going to be the guy for the job? But 21 wins in the last two seasons, 21-3 combined record in the last two seasons. And as you mentioned, after the loss of a star quarterback and several other NFL players, something that is very, very interesting. Oh yeah. And BYU's joining the Big 12. Why would you jump off that rocket ship right now? Like if I'm so like Luke Fickell, the Notre Dame job is filled. You would think that he is one of the top candidates to take any kind of Power 5 job, but yet I don't think that Luke Fickell's going to Oregon. I don't think that Luke Fickell's going to be taking in any of these other jobs, right? He stays at Cincinnati, and then when Ryan Day goes to coach the Bears, he takes Ohio State.
This is a lesson, by the way, of this cycle is the money is so good at these mid-tier jobs now that the coaches are able to be more patient. I mean, Cincinnati's coming up and they're paying Luke, what, 5 something, I think? Napier was getting decent money from Louisiana. There's a lot of examples of this, of guys who waited it out. I mean, it's risky because you could all of a sudden fall flat. Like Napier had to go. He had a bunch of 24-year-old guys on his team this year. Like this was it. But like Napier didn't take Auburn last year or South Carolina or whoever it was the year before. But I forgot who it was the year before. He waited out Florida, which is a better job than Auburn, in my opinion, and definitely in South Carolina. Fickell, if Fickell agrees to things behind the scenes with the Irish, like quickly, do you think he's the coach now, or do you think they were so enamored with Freeman? I don't know.
I think that I liked the take that if you really thought Freeman was the guy and you were willing to take that bet, then you don't back out just because it happened sooner than you thought.
And also, do you wait around for a few weeks knowing what Cincinnati's going to, like Fickell's not going to leave them during a playoff chase, and you're watching what happens at Oklahoma as every single recruit and everybody's transferring following Lincoln. You want to stem that from happening too.
Also, Roy Manning has been removed from the Oklahoma coaching staff directory. That was the coach who was out there recruiting with Bob Stoops.
Well, at least he's now free to go recruit for USC.
Yeah, he was recruiting for 2 schools. So, what is that? Danny joining the chat,
Allegedly
jumping in one of those. I guess they're all new now, so I haven't gotten to see them. But I know there's a lot of those scary little temp offices on the sides of the studio.
I actually have one with my name on it, which is kind of nice. In fact, they were giving me a hard time because they say I'm never here. Yeah, they're like it's a waste of space. But I'm like,
do you
hey,
have a phone? Nice. I'm gonna look up your phone number.
I have. Yeah, I have. It'll go to voicemail that I haven't checked in 3 years, so you can leave a message.
All right, cool. Yeah, so we've kind of we've been taking it over to
hit on everything, right?
Yeah, we've taken it over to the coaching carousel side of things. Anything big for you as we've got like nothing in place, but things are trending. Venables towards Oklahoma. Things are trending. Mario sitting there with 2 options. Manny Diaz is still recruiting for Miami because Miami doesn't want to fire him yet. a couple other pieces that could be falling into place. Clemson might have to replace not just one, but two coordinators. What's really standing out to you on the coaching front?
If the Oklahoma one feels to me more normal, and it feels kind of like this was their plan that has been coming together for 45 days, and Venables had to, get things aligned, and they're working on Jeff Levy coming with them. That feels to me like that was their first option all along. And it feels it feels normal, because the Miami thing just feels like a cluster. I mean, no athletic director. There was the rumors about Radakovich coming from Clemson, and then it wasn't true. And now it's, Barry Jackson, Miami Herald, just said, well, they're waiting to make sure the Mario deal is done. It just feels not as clean, which doesn't mean it can't get done. I think this is the direct result of not having an athletic director. That's probably why there's probably no one voice that's there. I mean, I got my Miami buddies texting me about the amount of money they're going to infuse in the program and how they're all excited. Get the deal done first, because I'm sure that's probably what Mario is looking into, trying to figure out who's in charge, or his agent is like, who's in charge? What are we going to get this done? Where exactly is this money going? What kind of resources am I going to have? So I think it just, that's like, the Miami one feels a little bit more up in the air, where I do think, even Bob Stoops, I think, didn't he say on the show yesterday, on the Big Noon show, didn't he say an announcement expected Monday? And now the word kind of feels like it's out already about Brent Venables. So I don't know. I don't trust the Miami one as much. Not to say it wouldn't get done. It just feels a little bit more discombobulated.
Like you just know too well that it could fall apart. You're just looking out there and you're like, it's not that I don't trust the sources who are saying that these are the efforts that are being made. What I hear you saying is, I don't trust the coordination. I don't trust, everybody being able to have everything in line to actually bring this thing to the finish line.
Yeah. How about Coca with the news? Sam Pittman just hired Jimmy Sexton. What does that mean? Uh-oh.
Means Jimmy is getting paid. Hey, can we add the Joe Brady thing real quick?
Oh, yeah,
I just thought about this. Long time ago. Do you remember who Caleb Williams was committed to?
No.
It's USC, right?
It was LSU, wasn't it?
Didn't he actually commit to LSU, or was that just kind of like a behind-the-scenes thing? I remember at one point he was definitely thought to be going to LSU, which means he would have been recruited by Joe Brady. This is back in 2020.
Let me check, see if I could find it real quick. I don't know if I remember that there was something with LSU, I think, during his recruitment, but I don't know for sure.
I'm trying to remember back in the day here.
I know that he committed on CBS Sports HQ on the 4th of July, and they had fireworks for him.
All I can see on the timeline is an unofficial visit and a school camp at LSU.
We got some commenters, though, in our chat room that say it was LSU. That can be our source. Those are our sources. I trust them.
They've never lied to us
before.
We
got good listeners.
I remember LSU was very involved, and that would have been the relationship would have begun when Joe Brady was recruiting him for LSU. So are we sure it's Jeff Levy? Obviously that's the reports out there.
No. I don't.
Clemson is pretty damn close to the Panthers.
The only thing that I've got on the Levy thing is that it is believed that he is the first choice. He is Brent Venables' first choice, but the Brent Venables hire by Oklahoma seems a little bit more, moving in that direction. It's almost like leaking the Levy is something that Oklahoma feels like it needs to do. Just we're hiring a defensive coordinator, but don't worry. We're going to get a good OC, because that is the first thing. It's what we say on the Cover 3 podcast. Oh, you're hiring a defensive coordinator? First take. Who's his OC going to be? So I think that that's probably why you let the news out. Even if Jeff Levy doesn't end up being the guy, he's a good enough name that an Oklahoma fan can at least feel calm.
Definitely. He's a guy. He's an Oklahoma guy too. The history there does help. I do think that was the plan, but I do think there's some holdup there as far as what Ole Miss might be willing to pay. So there might be some negotiating take place. But if Joe Brady's entered the chat, which he has, I do think that makes things interesting. And maybe you see this deal get done sooner rather than later.
Lots of pieces.
By the way, does Brian Kelly call Joe Brady and say, "Come on back"?
Yes.
Is that going to be a done deal?
I don't think
feels
it's a
too
done
obvious,
deal.
right?
But I just, to answer your question, does Brian Kelly pick up the phone? Yes, without a doubt. And
sorry, Chip.
I was like, and I wonder if Joe Brady in the back of his mind had maybe already checked out, because I don't know if y'all saw the Panthers against the Dolphins, but sure looked like the whole coaching staff had checked out of that game.
Really
You
looked
mean-
like Christian McCaffrey checked out too.
You mean on the Buzzsaw fantasy football team, who when I had the Dolphins defense, I did see that awesome Carolina Panthers offense. Lane Kiffin's buyout did not change, by the way, according to Andy Slater, who's a reporter. I think
Hasn't
he's
he been a
Florida guy.
little hit or miss lately?
Okay,
if I
that's fair.
recall?
Um,
I'm just saying.
yeah,
I think
yeah.
wasn't he the damn Radakovich hire? Well, I think I don't know. There was one in there.
Do we still think that's going to get done? Like, have you guys heard any other names for that?
I'm not on
No.
the AD hiring circuit newsletter.
I haven't checked.
I'm on it for FSU,
adscoop.com
but
yet.
just because I mean, that's like
That's more important to you then.
I've got dudes there. I don't have dudes in every 80s cycle, or actually most of them I don't. He reported that Lane would go to Miami if Miami offered a couple weeks ago, which could still be true. Obviously, I think Cristobal would be a choice over Lane.
Or it could have just been, hey, Ole Miss, I want to raise.
Yeah, that's very possible.
Yeah, or Andy could have been getting
I
played.
I think if Lane was smart, I think he would bounce from Ole Miss. Bounce while you're ahead.
All right,
LSU
one
was
like
down. Auburn was down. Texas A&M was down. Like, how long are they going to stay 8-4? Not forever. Like,
I think Lane's a really
Florida was
good fit.
down.
I think
Lane-
it makes sense there, though. Yeah.
You think it's
Yeah,
a better
Lane-
fit than Miami?
Yeah, because at Miami, there's almost the expectation of winning ACC championships. I think that Lane Kiffin can field a 9-3 Ole Miss team for a long time, satisfy the fans, generate a lot of national interest, finish in the top 25, put a scare in the big dogs because of your offense, and be entertaining.
I mean, it was working for Hugh Freeze very well until he started using the school's phone.
That's right.
Two coordinator hires I want to hit on if we can.
Yeah.
Real quickly. Georgia Tech has hired Chip Long, the Tulane OC. I like it. Tulane's offense was a hell of a lot better than his defense. And if he's going to save his
Yeah.
job there.
But Chip Long was replaced at Notre Dame by Tommy Rees, and he replaced Will Hall at Tulane after Will Hall left for the Southern Miss episode, and Tulane's offense kind of dropped off a little bit this year.
It did. I guess the only other reason I like this is because it is a similar situation where a lot of the guys on the roster still have the whole like option principles, or were at least
Mhm.
initially recruited to do that. So Tulane had the same kind of deal, being that, who was there. The other one is Western Kentucky's OC bounced to Texas Tech. And it looks like Quinn Ewers going to take a visit down to Texas Tech. You put Quinn Ewers in that system,
I was going to
they
say
could win the
that-
Big 12.
that would be
The new
just
Big 12.
The
If we're
new
doing
Big
the-
12?
Yeah.
The new Big 12 or the Oklahoma, Texas still there Big 12?
Well, the new Big 12.
Yeah.
If you're Texas and Ewers chooses Texas Tech over you, how does
fireable
that feel?
offense.
Yeah.
Fireable offense. I was going to say, like, but since this is kind of like a scattershot portion, we're an hour into this thing. If you're just tuning in, Alabama's won. Michigan's 2.
Oh yeah, that's right. We were here to
Georgia's
talk about
3.
the Raiders.
Cincinnati's number 4. Bud, if you were to set odds, if you were to have hunches, like what do you think is going to happen with Quinn Ewers?
It's hard for me to think he doesn't go to Texas, but Texas Tech is possible. By the way, betting stuff, Bama is going to go over 14, it looks like. And Georgia is already out to 8. Big split in the difference in where
You want it up, right? You're trying to wait to get Michigan. Yeah.
Exactly.
I would like Michigan in like a 10 or something.
Whoa.
But I don't think it'll get there. If it does, I will take it. Utah actually opened 10, and it lasted for like 15 seconds. I don't know if you guys saw that or not, but now it's down to 7.5. I would expect a lot of Ohio State opt-outs in that game.
Danny is so giddy to take Michigan on the money line ahead of the Orange Bowl and then show up to the stadium in maize and blue and just stand in front of the Georgia section with his arms out.
I'm gonna need
not
some.
entertained.
I'm gonna need some security down in Miami walking around. ESPN was really good about the security. HQ, not so much. You're kind of on your own.
Hey, battle tested. That's what we do.
Yeah.
Best thing you've got is like I don't know, man. Dane's pretty good security. You know, Dane will throw somebody out of a shot.
Yeah. In his True Religion jeans, he's gonna throw him out. Here's a DM I got at 2:53 a.m. last night. You must be effing blind. You effing do you watch college football? Obviously not, you biased bleep. Georgia doesn't deserve a spot. F you, bleep. Go choke on some bleep with that mouthful of bleepity bleep. I said, I just replied. I do reply to the open DMs. I see you're handling that ass whooping really well.
Well, first of all, I meant to text that to you, not DM it. But second,
Oh yeah. I was gonna say, and did you do it at like 6:30 too? Like when you woke up?
Maybe like 4, because he's going to bed. I'm waking up to get my flight to come back for this. When I'm a little bit delirious, this is why I put out a potential bracket with 2 first-round buys with 12 teams, leaving an odd number of remaining teams.
yeah, I received quite a few angry DMs from Alabama fans. They're not really angry DMs, but like, oh, I thought Georgia was going to beat the shit out of them. Ha ha ha. Like that kind of stuff. It's like, yeah, I was wrong, bro. What do you want?
The later the night, the more alcohol, the dicier they get.
Mm-hmm. No doubt. You can follow him on Twitter at BudElliott3. You can follow him at Tom Fernella. You can follow him at Danny Cannell. You can follow me at Chip_Patterson. We'll be back with you on Monday afternoon for a Pun Further review, where we will update you on the latest from the coaching carousel and point your attention to the very best bowl matchups. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.